welcome to SF Live episode 995. My name is Kai Hoffman. I'm the CEO of the Soar Financial Group, and I'm joined in a few seconds by Rick Trotman. He's president and CEO of Barksdale Capital. And before we do, though, and switch over to him, please use hashtag AskBro and get your question in while we're live. And I'm hearing myself twice. It's really irritating. That's why I'm stuttering. And I got the monitor on. And make sure you use that. We're going live on Twitter. We see your questions. I got to take this off for a second. This is really irritating. While I'm asking you questions, Rick, I got to turn the monitor off. This is really annoying. And still working out the kinks. I got a new microphone set up, a new mixer, and now I got the monitor in my ear. But again, a quick reminder, please use hashtag bro for your questions on Twitter. While we're live, we're going to use that. And to get to that at the end of our conversation with Rick as well. Of course, follow us on YouTube, on Twitter. And here, quick reminder, Deutsche Goldmesse happening next week. Make sure to subscribe to that or register for that. It's free. It's a German conference for our German audience. And also, we got some great speakers and companies presenting. And now, without further ado, let me switch over to Rick. And I'm going to put my headphones back on so I can hear you. And Rick, thanks for joining us. You're in quarantine right now. And how are things going? When did you come back? And where were you?
Yeah. Thanks, Kai. So I'm in day 4 of my quarantine. So I came back from our new project in Mexico a couple days ago, and now I get to live in my lovely basement for 10 more days, just to be safe and sound. But hey, look, gives me an opportunity to do a ton of work, read, and not much else. So
I don't know. I'm
it's
kind of
great. Good for
jealous.
my shareholders.
It kind of sounds awesome. I don't know why. Like reading,
Well, with
what?
3 little kids running around, I don't have those responsibilities for a couple more days. So
That's what
anyway,
I
it's
mean.
it's
That's
a little
exactly
less
what I mean.
stressful
You
than
can put the
normal.
noise canceling headphones on, and you're on your own world for 2 weeks. Isn't that? I don't know.
I
It
know.
it does sound
Uh,
very appealing to me right now. But you were down in Mexico. You're San Javier, and but before we dive in and talk about the project itself and upcoming news flow
sure.
catalysts and all that stuff, for some of our viewers that don't know Barksdale, give us a 30-second rundown of the company, real quick.
Yeah, sure. Barksdale is a base metal exploration company. We've got a portfolio of projects kind of in the desert Southwest. So we've got a couple of projects in southern Arizona, and then we just picked up a new project in northern Mexico, in Sonora. All the projects are kind of copper, zinc, lead, silver type focus. We're going to be quite active starting here relatively soon.
Fantastic. You just closed the financing as well. I
Yeah.
always like starting with a cap structure of a company. So you just closed the financing, $6.3 million Canadian.
Yep.
Where did the money come from? I know you've got a strong existing shareholder base, so I'm sure lots of them
Yep.
participated. But also the other question more is like, why did you feel the need to issue half a warrant?
Yeah. So great questions, Kai. We raised 6.3. We probably had demand for, probably 11 or 12, I would say. So it was great to see a strong response. We filled our existing shareholders first. So Tech Resources came in, held their pro rata, as did a number of funds that have kind of been with us since the beginning. And then after that, we focused on bringing in new investors that we thought really bought into the thesis, and that would be good long-term shareholders for Barksdale. So we brought in some new funds. We brought in some new characters that we thought would help kind of sell the story and get the word out. The money that we brought in should allow us to get a couple of drill programs executed, and get us to the finish line on a permitting process for our Sunnyside asset in Arizona, which is kind of our flagship. So it was great to see the response from the capital markets. And then, with respect to that half warrant, look, I wanted to incentivize people. We had never done a warrant deal at Barksdale. Our last couple of financings have been with big companies like Tech Resources and Osisko Gold Royalties. And so we hadn't issued warrants historically. That being said, we had a lot of patient shareholders that have been with us for a couple of different years, and I wanted to give them an opportunity and reward them, quite honestly, for hanging with us. And so all of those existing shareholders that made their initial investment at 40-cent financing with no warrant, I gave them an opportunity to come in first at 38 cents with the half warrant. And so, look, it was to say thank you to our existing shareholders, and obviously the new shareholders that came in. They're now part of the family, and hopefully they're going to make a lot of money off of that investment. So
Yeah, no, they needed to have some patience because before you acquired San Javier, you only had the Sunnyside project in Arizona. and permitting
Mhm.
has been an issue there, or not an issue, but it's just been a
Yeah,
part of the story, right? It's not, I
sure.
wouldn't call it an issue; it's just a process, right?
Mhm.
And so there was some patience required. Before we dive into the projects, though, like let's quickly recap cash. Total cash on hand is roughly, I'm guessing, 13 million, a little over 13 million in total.
No, no. So we raised 6.3 and we had some cash on the balance sheet. So we have probably 7.25 million,
Got my dates mixed up because I
approximately.
got September 1st numbers saying 7.3, and that includes the 6.3. Then perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that include the expected
Okay,
proceeds.
so
Yeah,
I
exactly.
take that back. Perfect. Anything else? Management board 7%. That's great. I always like to see skin in the game. I think there's nothing else to mention there. Did you guys participate? Or did management participate in the financing?
Yeah, most of management participated. I did not. We ended up having someone who kind of came late to the game who wanted to get in on the financing. Someone that we thought would really help kind of market the story, so to speak. And so I clipped myself out of the financing. And then what I ended up doing was buying a big block of shares once we came out of blackout after the financing closed. So I rounded my shareholding up, another 90 some odd thousand shares. And so I bought higher priced paper and didn't get a warrant.
Okay.
To allow someone else to come in. So anyway, I'm probably not the smartest fellow on that side of the fence, but look, I'm in this thing for the long term and to kind of exit this thing at a much higher price. So I don't care paying in a couple extra cents.
Yeah, rounding errors in the end, ideally. So
Hopefully, yeah,
no, fantastic. And okay, so
yeah.
one shareholder you have actually is Osisko, and I've noticed that Osisko Gold Royalties is sort of starting Osisko Development, Osisko 25. I don't know, one of the Osisko companies, right? And they're rolling most of their shareholdings, non-royalty related, into that company. And are you part of, as Barksdale Park, part of that roll up or re-strategizing within Osisko?
Yeah, yeah, we are indeed, Kai. Great question. No one's picked up on that since Osisko announced the spin out a couple of well, what was it, 2 weeks ago or so. So yeah, so Osisko Gold Royalties has about 10% of our shares. They are starting a new kind of development stage gold company called Osisko Developments. They are spinning out a few assets, including Barkerville and what they're calling the San Antonio project, which is right next to San Javier, our project in Mexico. And with that, they're spinning out all of the kind of a portfolio of equities. And so we are going with that new company. They are going to become our largest shareholder, and we're going to become neighbors down in Mexico. And so hopefully, that's a relationship that we can keep building. I think there's lots of opportunities for us to do some things down there. And obviously, they're a big supportive shareholder, so it's quite exciting. And yeah, it gets us kind of into the hands of a development stage company rather than a royalty company. So it's quite exciting.
Interesting. Okay. It's like, and have you had a chance? I know you were in Mexico recently, and you've only been back
Yeah.
for a few days now. But have you had a chance to catch up with the new management team? Like, what are sort of their plans? Like, when you inherit quite a few shares in companies that you as the
Mhm.
CEO might not even have bought for whatever reason. There's always personalities and egos at work as well, of course. Um, have they indicated any plans moving forward? Are they planning to sell all their share acquisitions to finance maybe construction of
Mhm.
Barkerville or any of the other projects? And where do you see an opportunity to work together with them on that?
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to catch up with them before I head down to Mexico. But look, the team is effectively the same, right? So they're spinning out assets, but they're also spinning out some of their team members into this new company. So, Sean Rusin is going to become the CEO, and then a couple of other kind of executive level folks from Osisko Gold Royalties will move over to the new company as well. And so it's the same team
Yeah.
effectively, or a subset of that team. And so from that standpoint, I don't think that there's anything new. What I did have an opportunity to do was meet with the new country manager that they have down in Mexico.
Okay.
And so we met up while I was down there, had a very nice conversation, and kind of got to know each other a little bit. And I do think that there's some opportunities there. We have, land tenements that are basically adjacent to each other. They're after gold, I'm after copper. And so, look, I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunities to work together going forward in that district. It's a big district. There's lots of potential there on the base metal side and the gold side. And yeah, I'm quite excited about it. Hopefully, we'll have some nice catalysts over the next
Yeah.
couple of months to 6 months going forward.
I haven't looked at San Antonio in detail. Like, what development stage is that project, and has there been prior production? Is there anything in infrastructure already existent? That like, I don't know. I'm just thinking out of the
Sure.
box right now. Like, I'm thinking probably
Yeah,
way too
yeah,
far
yeah.
ahead, but obviously it makes
No,
sense.
no.
There's a lot of synergies. Is there anything that you could salvage maybe from the other side that would generate a win-win for
Yeah.
both parties?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So San Javier is, I would call it a development stage asset. So the main deposit, if you will, has seen quite a lot of drilling. It's called Cerro Verde. It's literally right next to the highway. And you know that if you look at my LinkedIn account or anything like that, you'll see the pictures of the green copper kind of oozing out of the side of the hill. It's a copper oxide deposit.
Twitter.
It's seen a lot of
You need to
drilling.
put that on Twitter, not
Oh, okay.
LinkedIn.
Well, I'm
Okay.
sure Terry Ann, our VP of communications, she's super active on Twitter. So I'm sure she's distributed that. I think she's Lioness or something like that. Um, but anyway, so that's seen, you know, probably 20,000 meters of drilling, and that's where we're going to start. And so, you know, in a rather short order, we're going to be able to kind of take this historic work, incorporate it into a new model and advance it rather quickly. And the good thing about this district is that there's existing infrastructure within the district, not necessarily on our project itself. And so that's where I hope to do some deals in the future potentially.
That was my question,
There's
like as well. Like, I
yeah,
was asking more
exactly.
about development stage of San Antonio actually before diving deeper into San Javier, and
Oh yeah,
so it's
so San Antonio, yeah, so San Antonio, that project, um, you know, the it's kind of being reincarnated as a gold project, but in previous life, it was a copper mine actually. So there was a copper operation there called the Luz del Cobre that was in production for a couple of years, but I believe you know it hit a couple of technical snags. It had a small resource, and then I think the CEO of that company actually passed away. And so anyway, it ran into a bit of trouble. It ended up going effectively bankrupt, but it had all the infrastructure in place. It had an SXEW plant, a mine, heap leach pads, a camp, all of that stuff, approximately 10 kilometers away from our project, San Javier. And so all of that's still there. And I think that's part of the rationale that Osisko Development has with kind of pushing San Antonio, you know, forward quite quickly on the gold side, is that there's all this infrastructure there, and effectively, you know, you can. I think they're talking about a rather short timeline to get into production on the gold side. So, they're going to take advantage of that, have the existing infrastructure work for them, and then hopefully we can, you know, kind of sort something else out as well. If any of that infrastructure, you know, is usable on our end, maybe we can get something done there. But
do they have
you know,
permits, or do
time
they
will
need to
tell.
re-permit? Like, what's the status there? Do you know?
That operation had permits. I'm not quite sure, Kai. You'll have to check in with them. It had permits. I don't know what the status of those permits are, or if they'd have to get new permits to do, you know, the to kind of switch over to the gold side. I'm not quite exactly sure.
No,
So,
because I heard somewhere that in Mexico you can actually like neighbor in permits as well. So once you're, let's
oh,
say San
oh,
Antonio is permitted, which we don't know, that you could in sort of merge in San Javier sort of as a extension. I might be wrong on that one, but I think I heard that somewhere. So
yeah,
that's
I'm
why I
not
was
sure.
asking. Perfect. Let's
Yeah,
get back to San Javier. Let's talk about Barksdale, obviously,
sure.
and we've speculated enough
Yeah.
on the other end. San Javier, run us through the transaction real quick. You've only acquired the project recently. How much you pay
Yeah.
for it? Where, and I saw you're issuing shares for it as well. And who are you issuing the shares to?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, it's mostly a share transaction. So probably 90% of the value is in shares that are they're paid out over time. So it's $500,000 in cash Canadian, and I think it's 13 million shares paid out over kind of a 6-year time frame, or up to a 6-year time frame. And we really structured it so that we pay out value as we hit milestones advancing the project. That way, you know, we kind of build in the payments on a success-based schedule. So if we're completely underwhelmed, you know, we can walk away and not make the next payment. If it lives up to our expectations and we find more and we do great things and we advance this project, we pay out more value over time. And that's how I try to structure these deals. Um, and so, you know, we did this deal with a private company called Tusk, and Tusk is kind of championed by a fella based out of Vancouver named Randy Rifle. It's kind of a relatively big figure in mining. You know, he had a number of successes along the way. He ran a company that was called Francisco Gold that sold to Glamis back in the day, and he's a great shareholder. He's going to be a great shareholder, I suspect. He's the type of person that, for instance, during the Glamis transaction, he sold to Gold Corp, and I'm not sure if he ever sold a share all the way through Gold Corp and now Newmont. And so he's kind of a long-term patient investor. He put money into our financing, in fact, himself. And so he's the type of long-term person that uh, I would like to hold Barksdale shares. He kind of buys into the thesis, and I hope to make him a gobsmack of money at the end of the day.
Okay, two more questions. You answered most of them about like
Sure. Yeah.
the owner of the shares, like who are you giving the shares to. That's really important because I've
Yeah.
seen companies issue shares to, say, just retail investors at the end that owned the project and they didn't know what to do with it. They
Hmm.
just dumped it in the market,
Yeah.
hurt the share, and that was the end of that. And we
Yeah.
always were told at conferences, like, yeah, no, like, we know the broker well and we've got a good relationship with them. They won't sell. And of course, when there's a
Yeah.
big red line in the chart, you know where it's coming from, right? That's why I've been
Hmm.
asking that
Yeah.
question. The other one is, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. San Javier. Never mind. Let's skip that. But let's talk about historic work. It had to do with
Sure.
the shares issuance, but I forgot, honestly. Should have written it down. Let's talk about the historic work on the project and at San Javier. And what
Right.
have you acquired there? And the question actually was, it just came to me, why did he actually sell San Javier to you? Or in general, why did Randy Rifle have to sell San Javier? What was the intention?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Oh, I can speculate, obviously, but you'd have to ask Randy the specifics. Hopefully, it's because he liked me and he thought that we're going to do great things and make lots of money. Um, but look, Randy bought San Javier out of a bankruptcy process. So the last mining company that was active on the project kind of went down the tubes during the GFC. So they had an operating mine up in Utah. That mine wasn't doing very well, had some technical challenges. And ultimately, when copper price collapsed from $4 plus to whatever it went to during the GFC, a buck 50, they kind of they went bankrupt. And San Javier, that was it was the baby that was thrown out with the bathwater. And so Randy bought the asset out of receivership and spent quite a number of years trying to fix some of the land agreements or mineral concession agreements that Constellation Copper had put into place previously. And it took them years to kind of get all this stuff sorted out because Constellation were a bit sloppy and some people died. And anyway, Randy had to do a lot of work just to get the claims into a good spot. And in the process, he missed a copper cycle. And so this project sat on the shelf for way too long, quite honestly. And as you know, in mining, when something sits on the shelf too long, people forget about it. And most folks that are out there looking for new projects, they don't dig deep. They look at these, whatever was active in the past year or two or currently active, that's their universe. They really don't do a lot of deep digging to find new
How'd you
things
find it
or
then?
old things. So look, I was to be honest, I was doing a due diligence process on another copper asset, and anytime I look at something, I kind of develop a list of comparable assets so that I can look at the relative quality of the asset and kind of measure it against what else is out there. And ultimately, I couldn't come to deal terms on that asset. The owner just wanted an way too much money. It's just they wanted you to pay for future success right up front, and that's not how I like to structure deals. And so anyway, San Javier was the number one prospect that was used to kind of measure the quality of that other asset. And so when that deal fell apart, I just kind of picked up the phone and started calling around and found out who actually owned San Javier, and then started doing due diligence on that. And so that's how the opportunity came about.
Fantastic. And you actually acquired historic resources with it as well. So lots of historic data. When was the last time actually somebody worked on it? When was the last drilling done? I know none of it is
Yes.
NF 4341 compliant, I'm assuming, but
It is
oh, it
actually.
is. Okay.
There's a 43101 compliant resource of maybe 50 million tons of 0.35. But the problem with it, and why I don't talk about that resource very much, is that the work that was done just doesn't meet my quality requirements. And so, as I mentioned earlier, that last company, Constellation, they had a failing mine up in Utah, and from what I kind of put together, they were really trying to push San Javier fast to get it into production. And so, over the span of like 2004 to 2007, they drilled a lot at San Javier, and they were just trying to get holes into it to kind of get the resource to a spot where they could put the engineering around it and build a mine. And they had this 50 million pound per year type of number in their head that this asset had to deliver. And they didn't do a lot of great work. They did a lot of drilling, but they built a resource that didn't have a geologic model. It had no structural model in it, and there are faults that kind of displace the mineralization. So there is a historic resource on this, and it gives us kind of a starting point, but it's not something I feel comfortable putting out in the market. So right now, I've got a geologist down at site going through the old core, re-logging it, and we're rebuilding that geologic model so that we can start putting all of this great, useful data to work for us to give us a real resource that we believe in, trust, and that we can go forward with.
Fantastic. All right. So next steps at San Javier then. Have you budgeted out a program yet? Like, what are you going to do?
So we've got kind of the bones of that. It needs to get approved by the board, but we'll go in there with a kind of a single rig program, probably 3,000 to 5,000 meters to start, to test some of our kind of theses on what are the ore controls. And that's the most important thing to look at when you're picking up a new project is, what controls the placement of mineralization. And San Javier is kind of drilled in every bloody direction. I call it wagon wheeling, when the holes go in every single direction from a single drill pad. And if you have a structurally controlled deposit, you may hit the right structures, you may not. And so our focus going into this project is to take these structures that we think are channeling the higher grades and actually drill them out in a fashion that allows us to hopefully piece together higher grade components. And then once we understand those ore controls, we can start stepping out from the known into the unknown and test those new ideas so that we can not only make the deposit that we have bigger and higher grade, hopefully, but then we can go to these new areas and hopefully make some new discoveries, build in some more tons, and Bob's your uncle, we're off to the races. So that's kind of the plan.
Yeah.
So that first program will be 3,000 to 5,000 meters to give us that data that we need to plan the future drilling programs.
Okay. How much of the old drilling is salvageable? Like you said, it went like wagon
It's all
wheeling,
great.
but how much
Oh, yeah.
do you feel comfortable using again in the future for your own models and resource estimations?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. So we have all the core. It's in great shape. It's not the data that's bad. It's how the data was put together. And so all of it is salvageable. I mean, there's millions of dollars spent on drilling in the past. And so we get the benefit of all of that. I mean, they spent more drilling this thing than we're ultimately going to pay for it. So with that, it's a great deal in my mind. We just have to be a little bit more thoughtful of how we put all that data together. So that way we get a realistic model going forward. Hopefully it's higher grade and, tighter and has a higher confidence level.
Fantastic. And our listeners might have noticed that I've been experimenting with this format just a little bit lately because we've been running longer now. We're at 24 minutes already. Originally, we started out with calling SF Live a 20-minute format. It's somewhere between a webinar and a short, brief interview. Still experimenting, and we haven't covered all the topics yet. I still want to talk about Sunnyside and what's going on there.
Yep.
So I'm just going to let it run and see what the feedback from the audience is. Leave a comment or so if you think this is running way too long as well. But I'm hoping the information is good. I'm getting personally a lot out of it, so I'm hoping if somebody else might as well. So that's why I'm letting it run. Run us through the Sunnyside. Like it's on strike with the Taylor deposit. South 32 bought that for $2.1 billion. I think that's known by now. A couple of things looking at the Hermosillo properties, and your Sunnyside property. How close did they actually drill to your border? To your property line?
Oh, I mean, right next to it. I mean, I've got pictures of them, I don't know, 100 yards off the property line boundary. So on strike is one thing. We actually share the deposit. So
I've got the nice graphic right here. So
Yeah, so we're not one of these guys that's in Nevada that says that, we're on trend and, if you take this photo and you look at it, you can line up three mines that are 10 kilometers away. We're not in that kind of trendology thing. It's the same deposit. We just share it,
Yeah.
and our side has not been really delineated as of yet. And so we've got a world-class deposit on one side, and we've got the rest of the system on our side, presumably, and that's what we're permitting to drill. And unfortunately, the neighbors have some patented mining claims which allow them to do lots of great work very quickly, and so they're able to drill when they want, go underground, do all these things. They're rapidly kind of pushing this thing forward, and we have U.S. Forest Service claims, which is federal lands, and so we've got to go through a pretty painful permitting process to get the ability to do the drilling. But look, at the end of the day, the all the pain that we're incurring on the permitting side is gonna, pay for itself multiple times over because we'll have a long-lived permit that allows us to drill at Sunnyside for 7 years, unlimited amount of drilling from 30 different platforms, and then we can really show the market, what we have. And getting the drill out there and starting to, put some holes into this monster, what I hope is a monster, that'll be fantastic because it literally is just the other half of the deposit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that makes sense. Have you ever been tempted to just say, "Hey, South 32, here's a 3% royalty," and just walk away from it?
no,
No.
no, no, absolutely not. No, no. Look, there are different ways to create value for a company, but that's not one that I really want to walk down that path.
So okay, so you haven't been frustrated enough with the permitting process to just do that. So
No, no, no.
okay,
No, look, I get frustrated all the time with the permitting process, but I'm a very patient man. So I got three little kids at home. Like my patience is tested constantly. So I don't worry.
fantastic. And one thing you haven't mentioned, like, is there any timeline? When do you expect it? I've seen somewhere in the public comment, actually on the USDA side, is it
Yeah.
USDA, U.S. Forest Service website, that they're actually
Mhm.
comment period to end like in 2022. Is there? Do you have something similar? Like, what's your?
Yeah, so it's always a constantly moving target with the Forest Service. So right now, where we're at in the process is that the Forest Service and our third-party NEPA consultant, they're putting the final touches on the draft environmental assessment. And so they're kind of going back and forth internally right now, kind of looking at that document, which is the assessment of all of our proposed actions. That will be kind of in good shape probably here in the next month or so. And then after the holidays, they're going to go and put that out to public comment. And so that should kind of run its course in, I would say, February or March is kind of the expected timeline. And then once that's wrapped up, they'll go through all the comments, address them, make sure that they are addressed within that document, and then we'll get what's called a finding of no significant impact. And that's kind of like a loose permit approval. And so that I expect kind of by May, May of next year, June maybe, at this point. And then what happens after that is that anybody that commented during the comment periods can object and say, you didn't deal with my comment. I think that your work, you've got to convince me that, whatever I commented about is taken care of. And so that's a couple month process to go through that. And then after all of that is done, a decision notice is issued, and that allows us to post our bond and get to work. And so that, right now I expect to be kind of in the October, November timeframe. But once we get to the actual public comment period, that's when I'll have a more crystalline, kind of date out there. So, that's the real point everyone should be watching for. And we'll press release when we're actually, through that public comment period.
Fantastic. I actually got to ask you this, and I'm please, if you don't want to answer, just say no answer. But
Sure.
who's better for you down there for the permitting, Biden or Trump? What do you think? Will that make
It
a
doesn't
difference?
matter. No, it doesn't matter. Um, yeah, for exploration, it doesn't matter. If I was building a mine, I think Trump would probably be better. But for exploration,
Okay.
I don't think it's really
Okay.
moving the needle either way.
Okay. Let's skip that part, and that's the end of that.
It's
Yeah.
let's just put it this way: permitting on Forest Service ground is as difficult under Trump as it was under Obama, and so I would not presume to think that a new, political party would change.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Perfect. I'm
Yeah,
trying to get to sort of to a close here, but I've got one more comment I wrote down here in my notes. Is in a previous interview with Mining Stock Daily with our buddy Trevor Hall, you mentioned that you might expect to see more transactions in the copper space in Mexico, and that you might be
yeah,
part of that as well, like Barksdale.
yeah. Look,
So
yeah, my my rule of thumb is that if I can find an undervalued asset that can be advanced to the benefit of my shareholders, I'm going to take a run at it. I've probably looked at several dozen things since taking over at Barksdale. I haven't made a lot of offers just because I don't often find things that meet my quality requirements. But San Javier is the latest example. Last year, we ended up picking up a project from Tech Resources, which has got a great kind of copper target just to the southeast of Sunnyside. We're going to look to keep doing these accretive acquisitions, but just be confident that we won't do anything that kind of deviates from the mandate. I'm not going to go and buy some copper thing in Kazakhstan just because it's available.
okay, no
You
optionality
know,
plays, eh?
No, no, no. We're not going to buy any, 2 billion ton porphyries that are, super low grade because, one day it might all work. No,
All it needs is a
no.
higher price, man. So, um, so I've just got a question actually here on Twitter, and the question is: ask about the Sunnyside Porphyry, and you might
Yeah,
actually have to explain
yeah,
that one to me as well. So it just came in.
yeah. So the Sunnyside Porphyry is kind of the heat engine that created the Hermosa deposit. And so yeah, that was the original focus of exploration on the property back in the 70s. And so what we have at Sunnyside is actually a big porphyry that sits, the top of it is I don't know, a couple hundred meters down. And so it's rather big. Historical work kind of pegs it between 500,000,000 and 1 billion tons. But the grade is kind of like 0.35, and so it's too deep to be an open pit, and it's too low grade at this point to be a nice block cave or something like that. But it was the heat engine that ended up causing the formation of all these skarns and mantos, which are the Hermosa deposit, and then the rest of our property. And so it was extremely important in kind of the generation of all the mineral deposits in this area. And all of that is on the Sunnyside ground. And so, really, what we're looking to explore is the section of ground kind of between the property boundary and that porphyry, because that's where the most fluids would have been channeled, highest temperatures, and that's where we expect to kind of find the big deposits. And then think about it like an octopus as well, right? That porphyry is that body in the middle, and these mantos and skarns can be like arms coming off of this octopus. And so, our exploration efforts in that northeast corner will give us more information to then hopefully successfully explore around the dial. And so it's great from my standpoint because we've got billions of pounds of copper that kind of anchor this valuation. They're all historic, so I don't talk about them too much, but there's a lot of mineralization there. And yeah, once we have that permit, it's going to be fun.
Fantastic. No, Mining Don, appreciate the question there. And to wrap it up, I always like to give you like the last 30 seconds. Just run us through the next catalyst. Like, what can we expect the next news flow? I'm assuming it's coming from San Javier.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of things coming down the pike. I'm going to have some team additions. We are trying to negotiate a community agreement down there in Mexico, and we are working on our permits in Mexico. So I'd say between now and the end of the year, we're going to have some great news flow, kind of building up the company, building up the expectations. We'll lay everything out for everybody as to what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. So that way, as soon as we get that drill on the ground, we're in execution phase, and hopefully we're generating lots of great results for all of our shareholders.
Fantastic.
And future shareholders.
Awesome. Rick, thanks for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Of course,
It was
guys.
great running through the story again and answering some of my questions I had as well, so that's perfect. And everybody else, thanks for your questions. Quite a few came in here on Twitter. I hope we answered all of them, and appreciate the feedback on the longer format. So that's also good. It's just to let things flow. And just still experimenting with SF Live here. It's a lot of fun. And once you're out of quarantine, you actually got to come here. I got a second one of these here set up. So we'll do that here in person. And
yeah, well, it was great chatting with you, Kai.
fantastic.
This was fantastic.
All right,
and hope to be back soon.
We'll talk soon, and stay tuned for more. Follow us here on YouTube, follow us on YouTube, on Twitter. Make sure to hit the alert button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channels. Appreciate it. Take care.